Alright kids, today's review lesson is going to be on inequalities. Hey, I'm celebrating St. Patrick's Day way late because if you're Irish, every day is St. Patrick's Day. Alright, kiss me, I'm Irish. Alright, so I'm actually from a couple hours of Notre Dame itself. I grew up in Indiana. Don't you know? But no, I actually am Irish. But I don't speak like that, obviously. Hey, just for fun though, let's keep that up. Alright, so real quick, shout out to all me leprechaun friends out there. Thanks for tuning in to Mr. Douglas 6th and 7th grade math. Let's see here. We have inequalities. What are those? Well, first, we compare them to equations. The only difference is equations have equal sign. There it is, equate. That means equal. Inequalities means not equal. So what symbols do you think we're going to use? I'm almost going British there now, guys. I'm thinking ahead on the math instead of the accent. I don't really have anything scripted to say or do like a skit. I'm just trying to talk in an accent to liven it up a little bit. The symbols of inequality. You should have learned in elementary school. If you had a good teacher there, it would have been less than or greater than. But the thing we did this year in 6th and 7th grade, we had to deal with adding the equal sign on the bottom. That means less than or equal to. Greater than or equal to. It could be either this or that. It could be less than or equal to. For example, the story I always told, in my hometown there's a park. It used to have this ride called the Turnpike. It was kind of like bumper cars but nicer cars. You weren't supposed to be bumping on them, but there was a big track you could ride the car on. And they had a picture of the Disney character Goofy. And it said you must be as tall or taller than Goofy to ride the ride. If you know me, I'm a wee bit taller than the average man. I was the first of my friends to get to ride it. They had to wait till the next year and the year after that. But I could have been equal to Goofy, or I could have been greater. So that would have been greater than or equal to. Sometimes more than one answer is good enough. If you opened a business, are you going to say you're only going to want to make a certain amount? No, you'll take that amount or more. Greater than or equal to, okay? All right, maximum capacity on a plane or an elevator or what have you. It's always going to say this much or less. There's a maximum number, okay? We'll get more into all those phrases with word problems. Today's assignment to review this subject matter here, we're not going to be doing that. We're basically just going to be doing the algebra, okay? We're going to move things around to solve for the variable. We jokingly in my classes call it opposite day. We're just going to do inverse operations to move all the numbers away. Hold on a second. You got to remember when we talked about opposite day in algebra, the whole idea was to get the x by itself. If you watched the previous video, that's what that was about, getting the x or variable by itself. All right, so I always have some confusion. I think we all know the opposites of plus and minus, right? Pretty simple. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So if something said x plus 2, you would have to then subtract 2 from both sides. And that would make it disappear, okay? Then you'd have x by itself, all right? But if it's minus, then you're going to do addition to both sides. But if there is a 2 in front of the letter x, that actually means times or multiply there. 2 times x. So the opposite of that is you're going to divide both sides by 2. All right? If I had x divided by 2, now I need to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of it. Okay, they don't usually write x division symbol 2. They usually always make it a fraction. That way, there's just a lot of times in math, division is easier to do when you can simplify numbers on top and bottom of each other instead of doing this, all right? So the opposite of x divided by 2 would be times 2, okay? There we go. That's a brief intro. Let's take a look to refresh our memories from yesterday or any day you've last looked at algebra. The whole goal is to get that x by itself. So if I have x plus 2, you're going to need to subtract 2 from both sides. Looks like that. So positive 2 and a negative 2, they cancel out, they're gone, bye-bye. All that I've got left over here is the x all by its lonesome. And I have 4 minus 2 is 2, so x would equal 2. Now notice the answers are going to be way different on all of these, despite the problems having the same numbers and letters and looking similar. If I have x minus 2, the inverse operation, sounds like the word reverse, is going to be plus 2. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. This equal sign means it's balanced. You have to do the same thing to both sides to make the proportional relationship still hold true. It's important to hold through. X minus 2, we add 2 to both sides. That goes bye-bye. We have x equals 4 plus 2. Now we got x equals 6 as opposed to the 2 up there. Over here, here's what we just did on the previous page. This means anytime you do not see the multiplication or no operation, it's usually multiplication. If you have a 2 next to a parentheses, that also means 2 times. This means 2 times. So I'm going to need to now divide. That means 2 times I got to do the opposite day algebra, get the x by itself. I'm going to divide this by 2 to make this one simplify, disappear. But whatever you do to one side, you've got to do to the other. 4 divided by 2 is going to be equal to 2. Hey, it equaled the same thing as this one over here. All right, let's take a look at the last one. This one confuses so many students all the years I've been doing this. What is a fraction? What kind of math problem? It's my favorite kind of math problem. If you get a pizza, it's got 8 slices. So you can talk in fractions. How many slices are you going to get? That's 3 out of 8 or what have you. Well, you're dividing, okay? So x is being divided by 2. So I want to do the opposite. I'm going to times both sides by 2. And any whole number can be changed to a fraction by putting a 1 under it. The 2 simplifies, crosses out. All we've got left is x equals 4 times 2 is 8. There you have it. That's the review of the algebra. Hey, all we're doing today is the same exact thing with different symbols. Okay? So I don't want to get confused and focus on the numbers. I'm just going to use variables. This symbol, you read it like you see it. The big alligator's mouth or the shark's mouth faces the bigger meal. He's hungry. I'm starting to go Australian here. I'm going to have to jump out of it for a minute, guys. Let me get through these symbols. So the hungry hippo, shark, alligator, however your elementary teacher taught you, or Pac-Man, the mouth is facing the bigger meal. So you say A is bigger than B. So we use the word greater, okay? So that means greater than, okay? This means it's less than, it's smaller. The point is towards the smaller thing. That's the tail of the alligator or shark, whatever. Its mouth is facing the D. So you would say C is less than, okay? But what do you do when it has this bar here? That just means it could be equal. We're not sure. They could either equal each other or that has to be greater. So this is M is greater than or equal to. That's how you say that. And so what's this one? Well, then it's less than or equal to. All right, so that's your short review on that. So I could take a look at the same exact problems. I'm going to get the same exact answers. I'm going to minus 2 from both sides. And I'm just going to instead, I'm going to have x is greater than 2 instead of x plus 2 is greater than 4. Okay, so that's, you're going to have the same numbers as your answers, just these symbols are here. Okay, so if I add 2 to both sides, I'm going to have x is less than 6. Okay, same as on the previous page. X is less, or well, actually that was an equal sign. I kind of made it sloppy. It looked like a less than symbol. All right, so here I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That crosses out. I'm going to have x is going to be greater than or equal to 2. All right, and then lastly, this is divided by 2. So I'm going to times 2 on both sides. So I can make it cross out, simplify, disappear. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm just left with 1x. But I have to do times 2 over here. So x, same symbol, less than or equal to 8. Okay? All the same, sir. All right, the only trick when we work with inequalities, if you ever are going to multiply or divide both sides by a negative, you have to flip the symbol. So picture this, if you will, whatever x is, it could be 1, it could be 2. If I'm going to multiply it by a negative, I'm going to end up with a negative number over here, right? It's going to have to be less than the positive number. But let's just do the math. If I divide both sides by negative 2, now all of a sudden I'm left with a positive x. A positive number divided by a negative number, Dorito Man would tell me I'm going to have a negative 2. So now the positive x has to be greater than the negative 2. That's why it flips anytime you multiply or divide by a negative. All right, so now we're ready to do 4 Excel problems, and we are done.